In this knife talk video, I'm going to be talking about all 5 of my Great Eastern Cutlery Rendezvous Special knives. So, if you're unaware, these are the knives that are made specifically for Great Eastern Cutlery's Rendezvous, which is kind of an evolving thing. When I first went in 2014, it was definitely a gathering for people to come in, check out other people's knives, do some trading and stuff. But I think it was still a little bit more of an open house. They were giving a lot of factory tours, a lot of production knives, normal production knives in the store, and a little less of what has evolved now, which in 2018, with the unfortunate demise of Queen, and with it the Queen Knife Show that was normally on the same weekend, GEC now has opened up. They had some not pavilions, but tents for people to have knife displays under. So Charlie and some other dealers, Marin Grosh, or Ken from Blue Creek Cutlery were there, and some other people. And so now it definitely has evolved into, there's a lot of trading and selling and buying going on, aside and along with that in their actual factory store. So I started going mostly because I don't live that far away. In 2014, I only lived about an hour and 15 minutes away, something like that, maybe about an hour. So it wasn't a long drive or anything, and I really didn't make a big thing out of it that year. I think I got there probably at like 10 or something, and I was able to get one of these. These are an interesting Rendezvous Special because they were the first TC that wasn't a special factory order for Charlie Companion. So the TC Barlow, actually this one, is what got me into Great Eastern Cutlery knives and back into traditional knives. I had originally carried traditional knives, camping and stuff when I was little, then moved into modern knives, and then got back into the traditionals because of this knife, which is a GEC TC 15 sheet foot and originally in smooth ivory bone. But this was the first TC that wasn't a special factory order for Charlie. This was a run done for the Rendezvous. So they do a special knife each year at the Rendezvous. It's only available there. You can't buy it online or even call in or anything like that. And it's usually pretty sought after. This one and the next one they made 30 of. So pretty rare. They sold 10 each day. The Rendezvous is normally Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And this is a really cool knife. This is one of my favorites, and I actually, for the first few years, would carry and use these knives because I really wasn't a collector at that point. I'm still not sure if I am now, but I do collect these knives now. But this is a really cool one. So I was already interested in TC Barlows. This one has a couple other cool things. So first of all, it's the one-arm blade, also sometimes called a razor blade. But basically, this is like a super early version of the Emerson Wave feature. I wouldn't be surprised, he's never said it, but I wouldn't be surprised if Emerson had seen something like this before. Ernest Emerson. Don't know that, of course, and I'm not suggesting that he was inspired by this, but wouldn't be surprised if in his life he had seen a one-arm blade. Now this is a very pronounced version of it. If you look at a case one-arm blade, they're much less pointy here at the tip, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think that I even ground this down a little bit because it was so pointy. But what this does is it catches on a table, your pocket, whatever you can catch it on, and you can open it with one hand. Now, I didn't do it with one hand there, obviously, but you can do it. I just don't really have anything to do it on here. But believe me, it works really well. You can pull this out of your pocket, catch the hook here on your pocket, and have it open in a matter of seconds. Certainly not as fast as a modern one-hand opening knife with a spider hole or a thumb stud or a flipper, but pretty quickly. And supposedly, these were designed because so many people came back from the Civil War missing hands, missing limbs, and they needed a way to open their knives. And at that time, this was the only kind of knife. There was no modern one-hand opening knives. Even then, probably people didn't want to carry a fixed blade all the time. So they supposedly designed this blade for that need. So that's cool in itself, pretty historical in itself there. The other thing that was cool about this knife is the handle. So this is oil sucker rod wood, and it's probably my favorite handle material from GEC. I ask every year just so that they know that at least one person's still interested in it, if they're still going to make knives in it, and every year they say yes. So hopefully they do. But this is wood that was reclaimed from the surrounding area in Titusville. So if you're not aware, Titusville, PA is where the oil industry in America started. Colonel Drake drilled the Drake well. It was the first oil well in America and in North America, kind of in the European world. And it really started the oil boom. So at that time, in the early to mid 1800s, forgetting exactly what year, I should know that, but they didn't use metal or now plastic casing for the oil wells. So you'd have to drill a hole that goes down to the oil pocket, and then there has to be a casing in the hole to keep the oil from seeping out and everything. So in the early days, before they used metal or plastic, they used wood. So this, according to my dad, who's in the oil industry and actually is a very big fan and reads a lot of local history and is specifically the oil industry history, and specifically the Titusville area, he said that he believes that this is ash wood. They would have been using ash, and I think that that's the case. It does look like ash wood. But the cool thing about it is that this is wood that was actually used as a sucker rod, which is what they call the casing. They still use that term, by the way. That's not like an old-timey term. That's still what the oil and gas industry uses. So it's been, because it was used, it has kind of a green tint that normally ash wood would not have, and that's because, you might not know it, but it's called black gold. But in the Pennsylvania area, and especially those kind of shallow wells, it has a green tint to it, the oil. So it's almost like it has been stabilized or impregnated with oil naturally, before the GEC even started to work on it. So really, really cool. Lots of history, lots of local history, and again, being that I'm from Pennsylvania, from the area, and I grew up, riding in the car with my dad when he was going to work and stuff, hearing about the local oil industry history. It's one thing that I really like. This same handle material they used to make some parts knives for the 2014 Rendezvous. Don't know if I said that this is the 2014 Rendezvous. That's the year that I started going. They made some parts knives. They made an 81 Stockman, which is the same handle frame as the recent bull mooses, in this handle material. And that's actually probably still one of, if not the best made knife that I've ever seen from GEC. It's just a great made knife, and that's true for this also. So even after, 4 years, and like I say, I did carry and use this thing for a long time, super smooth. I mean, just glassy smooth opening and closing, great snap open and closed, no blade play, really just a superbly made knife. And that was true also for that Stockman that I got in this handle material, and I gave that one to my dad. So really cool knives at that first year that I was at the Rendezvous 2014. I don't think I stayed super long at this Rendezvous. I did get a chance to meet Charlie, which was really cool, and some other people, Sarah Pertinux on the forums and such. I got to see her great collection of blue knives, and got to meet some really nice people, and I was glad that I went. So I decided to go again the next year. So the next year, 2015, is this knife. So this is a 74 improved trapper. I think that they have a specific name for this, maybe the Cody trapper, but I'm forgetting it right now. I always forget it, and I check the tube every time I get this knife out because I think that it should be on the tube, but it's not. So I'm not exactly sure what the name of this pattern is, with the two blades, one being a Wharncliffe, one being a clip point, but it's a really cool knife, again, for a lot of reasons. So first of all, this knife they still only made 30 of. So these are all serialized, by the way. I got number 20 on this one. I got number 9 on this one. And I'm not trying to keep the same numbers or anything like that. That's more effort than, it already takes a lot of effort to get these things at this point, so I'm not trying to keep the same serial number. But anyway, on this knife. So first of all, I don't know that I'd seen the tortoise shell acrylic before this. So that was cool in itself. But to talk about this tortoise shell acrylic, what it is it's an acrylic, so it's just plastic. You know, of course they didn't kill any tortoises for this, but it's made to look like tortoiseshell. Very, very long time ago, they actually used tortoiseshell on knife handles, combs, boxes, all kinds of things. And, like, it's good not to do that anymore. I mean, definitely don't need to kill a bunch of tortoises and make them go extinct or anything, you know, silly and ridiculous like that for knife handles. Especially when you can make a really nice looking knife handle with acrylic. But even after that, after people had stopped doing that, thankfully, they started to use cellulose, which is an old kind of synthetic handle material that looked really cool, really interesting also, but cellulose gases out. So it lets off gases, and basically they can totally destroy a knife and even catch on fire. So that's the nice thing about acrylic, is that you can make it look like those old handle materials, either the cellulose or the, you know, real thing, without having to kill animals, kill turtles or tortoises, whatever for it, or, you know, ruining all the knives that are in the same case as this knife. So that's cool. Again, a little bit of historical connection there. The other thing is this has brass bolsters and shield, which I actually did have. This was not the first knife, I don't believe, that I had from GEC that had brass bolsters and a shield. GEC made some knives. They made a lot of branded knives when they were first starting out for other companies under other brands. They made some for Smoky Mountain Knife Works that had the Bradford Cutlery brand. I believe Smoky Mountain Knife Works used it, or at least used it. I don't know if they owned it, but they had them make some under that were really cool. They made a few different patterns, but I had the 23 pattern, which is the large single blade trapper, and a 73 pattern, which is the smaller single blade trapper. But they had a bullet-shaped shield, so if you have seen the recent GEC number 44 Buffalo Jacks, those are not the first GECs to have a bullet shield, although they look a lot better than the bullet shield on the Bradford knives that they made. I had a couple of those. They had brass hardware, brass bolsters on both sides, and a bullet shield. So I knew that GEC had made them before, and I was really happy to see it on this one. By the way, on those Bradford Cutleries, I sold them. I kind of wish I still had them, because Case actually didn't like that they made them under that brand, because now it's one of Case's family brands, so they definitely won't make any of those again. Anyway, I like that this had brass bolsters. So it gives it a cool look. I think it fits really well with this tortoiseshell acrylic. You can see, like I say, I did use these two, especially 2014 and 2015. And I also stored these in just like a box. And actually, if you see this divot here, I'm like pretty sure that that's from this thing. So again, this is pretty pointy, and brass is pretty soft, so it pushed down into there. But anyway, this is a trapper pattern. It has two blades, one being a kind of an elongated clip point, not quite a Turkish clip point. I'm not sure exactly what you would call it, but the cool thing is you can see that this is a saber grind. So GEC does mostly flat grinds, or mostly full flat grinds. This is a saber grind, so it doesn't go the whole way up, and it gives it a cool look, especially because of this long swedge that it has. So definitely a cool looking knife. Like I say, I've used this one a little bit for hunting and things like that, and it's a really nice knife. You can see it has good action also, no blade play at all, nice action. I dropped a kick on both of these knives. This one I dropped quite a bit, and I think that it makes it a really, you know, a much better knife to carry and use, especially because it is a two blade. So the second blade here is a nice, I really like this Wharncliffe blade. It's a Wharncliffe shape, as I said there. And again, it's a saber grind, so the grind doesn't go the whole way to the top. And again, it looks really great with this swedge. So a really nice straight edge. I've sharpened this one quite a few times because I've used it, and it's a nice blade shape. I'm really a fan of this Wharncliffe that they use. But because I dropped the kick here, it's still, you know, comfortable in hand. Again, great action, no blade play. Great action. And even with that Wharncliffe closed, it still feels pretty good in the hand. It's not a thin knife because it is two full springs, but a really cool knife. Again, really well made. They always make sure to make these Rendezvous knives especially well, I think, and unique, definitely. So again, unique because of the brass and the saber grinds and the tortoiseshell acrylic. So that's the 2015. Now, I believe 2016 was the year where I went and my dad came, and I ended up having to take my little brother back home or something like that. So I didn't get to stay super long this year either. But one cool thing about this year, so this is the knife from that year. It was the 10-year anniversary, so they had a lot of really cool knives, and I got some of them, and one of them this year, and actually, this might have been the year before. I'm not 100% sure, but they had Bill made 3 TC Barlows with a sheepfoot blade and a cap lifter secondary. And he presented them to Charlie, and Charlie appreciates traditional knives, and he doesn't think that a cap lifter on a Barlow is traditional. So there's a picture of him holding one out, holding his nose also. You know, like they stink, like he's not a fan. And he wrote, "Charlie not responsible for a knife," or something like that on the tubes. So I had to get one of those. I got one of those, and it was a really cool knife, but I've had some times where I sold a bunch of knives off, and that one went in one of those, and it was partly because I already had this knife, so I wasn't really using it that much, and but very unique knife. Like I say, they made a lot of cool ones in these years, and they continue to, but especially I think for this 10th anniversary. And again, I'm not 100% sure that was when that was made, but one of 3, they only made 3 of them, so really cool knife. And again, that's another cool thing about the Rendezvous. You get the opportunity to buy knives that really you can't get anywhere else. They're not going to go to dealers. They're usually, you don't even see them on eBay. Like, I mean, you very rarely see these Rendezvous knives go up on eBay or the forums, blade forums and such. I don't know why that is, but you very rarely see them. I've seen the 2013 knife once, I think, maybe twice, and this one's on sale on eBay right now. Of course, someone's, cashing in. It's only a few days after the Rendezvous, but you don't see them anywhere near as often as really any other GEC knife, I don't think, except some of the super rare ones. So that's another cool thing. You can get these rare knives, and there's a lot of cool things about this knife. So this is a number 74 Mustang in primitive bone and stainless steel. So GEC has made a lot of stainless steel knives, nowhere near as many as they have made in carbon, but they haven't made any, I don't believe, any folding knives since this one. So this one is made in 2016, obviously, for the 2016 Rendezvous. But it's a 74 Mustang. It has a nice drop point blade and this primitive bone handle. Really cool. I almost didn't get one of these. I think that this year, 2016, was the year that getting the Rendezvous knife became much harder. So I got there, and I think maybe, it was a timing thing or something, but I almost didn't get this knife, and actually Chris, who runs the store, kind of pulled me aside and said, "Hey, do you want to get one? Because we still do have a couple." And I said, "Yeah, definitely." So I was really thankful for that. Really nice of her and of them to offer one to me, and it's a really cool knife. The stainless knives that GEC makes, you can see that's a heck of a snap. They seem to be even snappier than the other ones, and that's not related to the pull. The pull's only about a 6 on this knife, but just really smooth, really snappy. You can see it even shook the camera there. So really well made, no gaps or anything. Very cool primitive bone handle. So this is like bones that have been buried for a while, I believe, and then reclaimed. This almost looks like their pioneer bone. I'm not really sure what the deal is with that, but I don't think it is. I mean, it's primitive bone, but kind of different, smooth on the back and then nice and rough on the front. So that's kind of cool too. And I don't think that they've made any stainless steel folding knives since this knife. So that's another unique thing about this one. Really cool, really well made. I used this one a little bit. I really like this knife. I think that it's a great kind of EDC knife. So as with a lot of these, mostly except for this one, I would like to carry and use these knives. It just seems like if I'm going to collect these knives, if I'm going to have one set of knives that I collect, it might as well be these ones that they're only once a year. So I'm trying not to carry and use them. So moving on to the next year, 2017. Oh, the other thing here, for this one, they made a pin. I actually thought that they made a pin for this one also, but I don't remember, and it doesn't seem like I have it. They didn't really do the pins up until 2016, I don't think. So there were no pins for these knives. But they did start in 2016. You can see the 10-year anniversary for the 2016 one, and then 2017. And the 2017 knife was a 38 special with LVS Abalone covers. So that's unique in itself. The LVS Abalone is a really, really cool material. I actually now have a couple knives in Abalone, but this was my first knife in Abalone. And it's a really cool material, very, very unique and exotic, especially very shiny and kind of catches your eye for a natural material. Now, there is a layer of clear acrylic over top of this one, and that's to make it stronger and keep it from getting, chipping and stuff. But very, very cool. I didn't love this pattern at first. When I saw it online, I thought it was really strange looking. It looks like a seahorse. I mean, it is a traditional pattern, but I thought it was strange looking. When I got it, the action wasn't super great. It did need kind of oiled and worked in and everything. But now it's really nice. So you can see the action is nice. It dropped the kick on this one also a little bit. Sits well within the frame. Just a really great knife. No blade play. Nice snap open and everything. And it actually feels a lot better in the hand than you might expect. I think that it ends up feeling really good in the hand. So really a cool knife, unique in the shape. Not as much, history, I guess, to this knife as some of the other ones, like the, different things on these, but just a very cool knife. This one was more expensive than these last ones had been. The Rendezvous knives, and this is something that it's not just me thinking this, one of the things that people always said online about the Rendezvous knives is they were cheaper than they would be if they were a normal production knife. So I believe that this knife was like $70, which a TC would be way more than that. I mean, even at this time, they were at least 110, I think. This one was less than 100, and this one was also less than 100, I believe. I don't remember that exactly. I don't have the receipts or anything, but I believe that. This one was well over 100, and I think that the price jumped up on this one. But again, that might have been because this is the year that they got hard to get. So 2017, last year, I went pretty early. I think I got there like real early in the morning, like 2 or 3 or something. And they opened the store at 7. So pretty crazy. Like, I mean, I totally understand that if you're not into knives, and even if you are into knives, if you're not specifically into collecting these knives, that seems totally ludicrous. And believe me, it at times feels ludicrous when you're sitting in the dark on a porch, waiting for a knife. But the nice thing is you do get to talk to other people who are really into knives. There's some really knowledgeable people. Gary Kiefer, who's a dealer for Great Eastern Cutlery, who lives in the same city that I do, and his brother, and then some people that I met at the previous Rendezvous. So you do get to talk about knives with other people who are passionate about them. And kind of that's another thing I want to talk about, is that one of the best things about the Rendezvous is aside from the knives, there are definitely awesome knives, but aside from the knives, they it's just a gathering place for super knowledgeable, very passionate people who really know a lot of information about knives. They have a lot of great knives, and they want to talk about knives. Which, if you're into knives, in a big way, you know that not everybody wants to talk about knives. I mean, you can talk people's ears off pretty easily when you're talking about, all these little things like I talk about in my videos. So, there's definitely a difference between coming online and watching a video on YouTube where someone like me talks about all these little things that I like about these knives, and doing it in person and getting to interact and ask questions and answer questions and see the knives in person. So I think that's really the biggest value of the Rendezvous, is that it's a gathering place for other people who like GEC knives and traditional knives in general. And even a lot of times the people there will have nice modern knives also. I think a lot of people do tend to carry a modern knife and a traditional knife like I do. So that's really the biggest value, I think, is getting to talk with and converse and meet in person people who, like knives like you do. And one person who I was really glad to meet this year is Ken from Blue Creek Cutlery, who I buy a lot of knives, buy a lot of GEC knives from, because, it's just nice to know someone who you sent a lot of emails to, called on the phone and everything like that. To get to meet them in person is nice. So both of those things exaggerated this year, because they had the tents, and you could display knives, and I think GEC is exponentially growing in popularity. I got there even earlier this year and didn't sleep at all or anything, and was still sixth in line. So I ended up getting one of the knives again, but long wait and everything, but even more got to discuss them with people, and it was really cool and everything. But this is the knife for the 2018 Rendezvous. So here's the pin real quick, and then you can see that this is a number 46 Whaler. So pretty cool knife. The first thing that strikes you is the shield. I think that was the first thing that I noticed. The second thing is the very, almost strange, different looking wood. And that's, I'm going to talk about that here in a second, but this is actually the second Whaler that I have, or well, the third that I've gotten, the second that I'm keeping. I got one in muscle bone, and I'm going to take a small step back here. Sorry to do this, but one thing, I do have a parts knife from the 2016 Rendezvous that I would really like to show with these knives, and that I would really like to show especially against this knife, because it's a 45. This is the 46. I got a 45, but it's at GEC still for getting fixed. It was seizing up. So unfortunately I can't show that. I wanted to show as many parts knives as I could. But anyway, it's the inverse of this, and this is a Whaler. And to talk about this knife here, I do, like I say, I have the Allegheny Mountain Knife Collectors Association Whaler from this year also. I got one in muscle bone to go with the muscle bone 45 that I have, and it was just too hard to open. The not so much the main blade, but the pen blade, just like unusable. So, I mean, that one was going to be a user, so I didn't want to keep it, being that it was going to be a user and I couldn't use it. But I do have two Whalers now, which is not something I would have expected. But anyway, to look at this knife, there are a couple really cool things about this knife. So one thing here is this shield. This is just a super cool shield, and it's amazing, truly, truly amazing how well fitted this shield is, especially considering this mouth. So Randy, who's an engineer at GEC, and really, if you get to go to the Rendezvous, I strongly suggest talking to him. It's always a treat to talk to him and see his thought process on the knives and everything. He talked about how he and Bill kind of went over back and forth about how wide open the mouth should be. And they kind of went in between to where it is here. So that is just amazing that they fit that shield in so well into this wood. Really cool shield, and it's a Whaler because supposedly this knife pattern was made so that the people who worked on whaling boats could cut the very big rope. So you would, oh man, it's a tough one. You would open it up and put this on the rope and hit it with a mallet, and it would cut the rope. But I don't know how true that is. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it were true. I wouldn't be surprised if this pattern was made mostly just to show off the manufacturing prowess of knife companies in the olden days. But that's the story anyway. And that's the other cool thing about this knife is what this handle material is. So it's a very, very different looking wood. I've seen pictures of other people's knives, and mine looks different than theirs even. Mine has this very dark spot up here, light around the pins, and then kind of some grain, and then on the back, small dark spot, and kind of strong streaked grain there. So very, very different looking, and there's a lot of history to it. So first of all, it's pine wood, which is unique in itself, but I have a kind of information card that GC gave out. So it's longleaf pine, also called oily heart pine, and basically it's reclaimed wood from the building that was E.T. Moore Manufacturing. And this oily pine or oily heart pine was some of the forest, the old growth forests that were used to build a lot of the manufacturing and industrial factories. And you guys can pause the video and read this and such, but basically they reclaimed some of the wood from one of these factories, the Plymouth Cordage Company, that made a lot of the rope for, whalers, whaling boats and things like that. So it kind of has a connection there. It's an interesting connection, and supposedly now, I don't know, I don't think they know whether it is or not, but supposedly this wood was probably treated with either linseed oil or whale fat, whale blubber. Now I don't know if there's any way to test for that or see if that's the case, but it's a cool historical connection, being that it's made from the salvage timber from the old factory buildings of the Plymouth Cordage Company. So that's the historical connection with that one. Makes the whole whaler pattern make a little bit more sense, I think. But again, as you can see, the main blade on this one, not super easy to open, not super smooth either, to be honest. I think that if I got this knife not as a collector piece, if I got this knife to use it, I wouldn't keep it. I would either send it back or sell it, because it's just, it's not super smooth. It's pretty rough, and even more so, the pen blade is like as bad or worse than the muscle bone one that I had. It's such a strong, it's like a 9 out of 10 pull. I'm worried every time I open it that I'm going to slip and cut myself or something. So this is definitely not a knife that I think was made to be used, and I don't love it that that's the case. All these other ones could easily be used, and I would like to use them. This one just too difficult to open for it to be a real user. So I don't love that. I always appreciate, even if these knives are collector pieces that I know I'm not going to use, I always appreciate them to be made well enough and made in a way that I could use them if I wanted to. So it's a very interesting knife. No gaps or anything really on the back. Maybe, to be honest, some very, very slight gaps right around here, but nothing too bad, and definitely a very interesting knife with the shield and the wood and everything. So a little different than these previous knives in that I don't think I would ever want to use this knife, but like I say, I think that this is really the only set of knives that I'm going to collect, because you get them in person and everything, and they're pretty rare. By the way, I forgot to mention, these two, like I said, they made 30 each of. This one they made 47, pretty weird number, but that's what they made, 47 of these ones. These two they've made 50 of. So definitely they're making more, but still, a pretty rare knife. So that's all of the GC Rendezvous knives. I've been going for 5 years. This past weekend was the 5th year that I went, this past Thursday. Really, I think I'm going to keep doing it, although I don't know if I'm going to get there quite as early. I might go on Saturdays from now on or something like that, and, hope there are still parts knives left over, but I am still going to go and try to get the Rendezvous knife and talk with everyone and everything. And I think that it's a really cool thing to do, and if you ever get a chance to look at or even buy one of these knives, they're all very interesting. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments, don't forget to leave them below. And if you have enjoyed it, don't forget to like the video. I've got videos on all 1-minute overviews on all of these knives in both the 1-minute overview and their own folder on YouTube here. So check those out, and I've got lots of other videos, over 100 other videos. So check those out, and if you want to get notifications for when I post new videos, subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to go out and do good.